This just in, 50 million customers' data was not compromised this morning in a security breach that didn't happen.
Wall Street not rattled at all.
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, look at the guy.
Sir, what went right? What went right?
Everything. Thank you.
With threat intelligence, behavioral analytics, and 6,000 experts, IBM Security will help keep you out of the news.
My dad's company wasn't hacked today. Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General Manager, IBM Security, Mark van Zadelhoff.
That video I chose on purpose. It's actually 2 years old, but it represented a certain optimism that I was feeling as I saw some of the other speakers that have spoken before me at the conference, some amazing speakers. I think it's really good to see that sense of optimism this year. We tend to focus on the bad headlines and everything that's gone wrong in the year since we've met here at the RSA show. Maybe it's some of the helpful discussions we've had about diversity and inclusion that's raised the optimistic feeling. But I think there's more than that happening. I think we are making progress. Not at the end of our game by any means, but we are making progress. And you know, progress sometimes is very hard to see. My 3 daughters will all have their birthdays in the next month. They'll age another year. I won't notice that until I take a picture of how they looked a year ago. And then you really see the progress that these kids have made. And you all have examples like that, where suddenly progress occurs. And I think if you take your phone out of your pocket and just think about the amount of security that is crammed on that little device, if you think about what now comes out of the box in operating systems, is inherent in some of the databases, the encryption that is inherent in databases and operating systems, we have made a ton of progress. And there's more examples behind me on the screen. It's not just technology progress. Been in security for 20 years, and the other day I got the pleasure to present to 20 CIOs from huge global conglomerates. And you guys, we've all been in security for a while. CIOs, I mean, a few years ago, you could dazzle a CIO just by saying the word, advanced persistent threat, APT, right? Oh, what is that? But now, this group of 20 CIOs were peppering me with detailed questions on how they could be better prepared, what they could do, ransomware versus malware, on it went. And I thought to myself, that's a sign of progress. So I think maybe it's on me as a representative of a company that has been around more than 100 years to talk about progress and talk about how progress sometimes requires big bets. And IBM has made some big bets. In fact, IBM has a history of making big bets. And you guys will start throwing things at me if I go into the history of the bets IBM has made in technology. So let me talk to you about some of the bets we're making today outside of security. Behind me here, I saw this just last week, is IBM Q. It is an actual quantum computer. This is a bet that IBM has been working on for years. And this one is a 50-qubit computer in production, and people are starting to develop capabilities on this. This is not just, technology. This is going to be man and machine coming together to develop new applications on quantum computers, and they are going to change society. There are problems in science and chemistry and biology that can only be solved by the computational the computational capability of the quantum computer. 50 qubits, we're just getting started, and it's going to be an amazing world that we live in here with this huge bet. Of course, we're all cyber people in the room here. With quantum, we'll start to be able to do things good and bad from a cybersecurity perspective. A lot of our current encryption technology will be decryptable based on some of the ways these quantum machines are able to compute and calculate. We all know somebody that has suffered from cancer. But that's another big bet that we're making. The picture here is some of my colleagues I share a building with in Boston, Massachusetts, from the Watson Health unit of IBM. And if you've had somebody who has had cancer, and I regret to say that just 3 weeks ago I lost my father to cancer, You know what it's like. And we've all had this experience, distant or close to us. You're in a hospital, your friend or loved one gets diagnosed, MRIs, scans, all sorts of blood is taken and scanned. And then the question is, what's the diagnosis and what is the treatment? And you want your loved one to have the best diagnosis and treatment available. Now, it's one thing if you live in San Francisco or Boston, but think of all the parts of the world where the best medical advice is not available. And this is what Watson Health has done. They have trained Watson for Oncology to be the best doctor helping doctors make that diagnosis. 115,000 patients around the world have been diagnosed by Watson for Oncology. And I mention that because A, it's a big bet, but B, this is not a computer telling you the answer. This is man and machine working together to do something truly different that hasn't been possible before. It's a big bet. Man and machine will come together to do wonderful things. Sometimes in security, we're focused on magic technologies. Sometimes we convince ourselves, and I come from a startup myself, but that we're one startup away from solving cybersecurity. And you see many of the contenders on the show floor here, and I love that enthusiasm, but it's more than just man and machine. I want to talk today about how when these things work together, we can see force multipliers appearing in cybersecurity that are making a huge difference. So to get there, first let me just discuss the foundation of cybersecurity. And I've been discussing this for a number of years, so some of you have talked to me about it. I believe that to be good at cybersecurity, to have that foundation, you need to think of cybersecurity as an immune system of capabilities. Again, all of the companies here, all of those capabilities that you have come down to these domains of security where our customers need to bring it together and make sure that it works. And when they think about it holistically, when integration is occurring in between the parts and the domains of cybersecurity for an individual customer, real magic happens. The magic tends to happen in the middle, where all the analytics come together in a security operations center for our customers. That is the foundation. When that is working well, the force multipliers that I was referring to earlier really come out. So what do I mean by a force multiplier? You all understand the term, but think about it this way. If you have soldiers on the ground, the force multiplier ends up being satellites, tankers, aircraft carriers that make the boots on the ground that much more effective. These are multipliers that can really make a difference in everybody's environment if you apply them well. It takes the 4,000 people in this audience and allows you to do what 30 or 40,000 or 100,000 people can do. And given the skill shortages in cybersecurity, we need these force multipliers. And I think there are three, and I'm going to go through them in this presentation. Have you ever seen a true expert do a task? Think about a grand chess master, as is shown by the image here. Or think of that moment when you get home at the end of the day from your commute that you do every day. I know the traffic in San Francisco is horrible, no better in Boston where I live. And you get home and you realize, I haven't been thinking about driving the whole way home. I've been thinking about other things, but yet I got back to my driveway. That is a set of intuition that you have when you do a task repeatedly. When you're a chess master, you don't have to think about the next move. You know the next dozens of moves. You're thinking more strategically. That, to me, is the essence of augmented intelligence. And we are entering a world, like I described with Watson for Oncology, where we really have some amazing capabilities at our avail in this area. What if everybody here had the grandmaster's power of intuition for cybersecurity? Well, that was a bet, the moonshot, if you will, that we started working on about a year ago with Watson for cybersecurity. And actually, if you follow the story about Watson for Oncology, it's very similar. We did not try and leverage AI just to find the latest malware. There are lots of companies out there on the show floor that do a great job of that. We wanted to train an artificial intelligence capability that could think like a security analyst, just like IBM trained a computer to think like an oncologist. Was that possible? Well, that took quite a bit of doing for us to get that done. You see some of the stats here, but it has been an amazing project where we have taught Watson for cybersecurity the language of cyber. Backdoor in cybersecurity, very different than in a hospital, and on and on. You guys know the terminology well. This is making a big difference with our customers. I think it's just a good example of how man and machine come together to augment the intelligence and let you do something much more effectively and fast. It's not just that example. I think we're in the middle of seeing a total change in the game with AI, whether we call it artificial or augmented intelligence. There are a myriad of examples I can go through that I'm seeing customers leverage that makes a huge, huge difference. Think about source code scanning, app scanning like is shown there. Really difficult. Thousands of lines of code. You finally convince that development team to scan their apps and not have those open source or well-known vulnerabilities in the code. And then you have tons of false positives, because that's what happens. It's very difficult to scan source code. Well, applying AI to that, artificial intelligence to that, can reduce these false positives by 98%. Or finding insiders, right? Insider risk, risky users, as I show here in the fourth bullet, also has been the holy grail of cybersecurity on the insider side for a long time. How do we find insiders that are truly risky? Well, again, leveraging machine learning and AI, we can start to do this in a very effective fashion. And the way it works is that you actually are able to train systems to learn. Over the course of days and weeks, it learns what users are doing, and then can alert you when that user goes rogue or that credential is used by a hacker to do something bad. So AI is a big game changer, and I think it's a first force multiplier. We've had a lot of discussion about it here. In the spirit of now, I think AI is here now, and done well, it is a big difference for all of us. The second is what we're referring to as orchestration and automation. I had lots of ways of talking about this and trying to describe this. Self-healing systems was one. But I'm inspired this week by the airplane that had to reroute from New York to Philadelphia. I don't know about you guys, but I found that to be a fascinating and inspiring story, and obviously very sad given the casualty involved. But what happened, if you read a bit of the detail, really is something we can all learn from in cybersecurity. There was a runbook, there was an orchestration, there was a teamwork that occurred during that crisis, right? The pilot and co-pilot started working together in a way that they had thought through, had written down, pulling up manuals, pulling up probably an app on an iPad where this specific scenario was discussed, shut down fuel to the engine, immediately dropped to 5,000 feet so that you had the depressurization going away in the cabin, find a new airport. The ground crew had their own runbook, working well together to minimize casualty. I found it fascinating. How do we do this in cybersecurity? I'm seeing customers leveraging automation and orchestration technologies, runbooks, to make sure that the right person with the right data is there at the right time to make decisions. And when this happens, I do think it's as close as we'll get to self-healing systems, where a breach occurs, or an incident happens, or an insider goes rogue, or a GDPR compliance issue comes up. What's the runbook? How does that team work together? What are the actions that are going to be taken, and what are the automations that can make changes right away to contain the issue? I'm really excited about orchestration and automation as a force multiplier. I love the technology, but I especially think it's beyond technology, it's practice. So within this area, we ended up somewhat accidentally spending a lot of time practicing response. I like that t-shirt too. A member of my team convinced us to build a fake sock in our Boston office. So what do we need a fake sock for? Well, we're going to use it as a lab to experiment how everything works, that immune system coming together. That actually sounds pretty interesting. And we did all that. But actually what happened was it was less a lab. It ended up being a practice area for our customers. We've had hundreds of customers coming through here. It started off with techies, but then they brought in their lawyers and their HR folks and the marketing folks and the communications folks. We've had a couple governors go through there. I've had some agencies go through there. People want to practice what it's like to go through a breach. We learned a lot watching people go through this breach scenario, not real breach, and really seeing how to improve both the technology, the orchestration, the automation, and the practice. We had a lot of fun. People tried really hard as they came into that office. They really committed themselves to stopping the breach. What they didn't realize is that there's a young woman in the back, and she makes sure they always fail. Always fail. The plane in the simulator always crashes. And boy, does the sweat appear on the forehead of all these people that have gone through this. And then all of a sudden, there's a cameraman that wants to do an interview. What happened? Why do you still have your job? You leaked all the data. It's a fantastic experience. And I think it just speaks to the hunger that we have to not just have technology for orchestration and automation, but to be able to practice what we learn. So hopefully those first two areas give you a sense of the person and the team. Augmented intelligence is helping people like yourselves go from doing the work of one of you to 1,000 of you if we get this right. The second area around orchestration and automation is about the team, and the team really working better together during a crisis. A couple summary lessons on this second point here from the fake SOC. Culture counts. Look at Maersk. I don't know if you guys studied Maersk. It's so much fun to put up that Maersk headline and say, oh boy, you know, big disaster. Did you guys read what the CEO said? Did you see the incredibly clear commander's intent that the CEO of Maersk communicated through WhatsApp often during that crisis, which was do what's right for the customer, we will cover the cost. That is a clear way of putting a good culture in place during a breach. Commander's intent, crystal clear. We saw playbooks cracking under pressure, especially the ones in spreadsheets and Word documents, immediately had to be rewritten. And then we realized that leadership matters. And what's funny is that, you know, you have these wonderful MBAs come in there, and they want to make PowerPoint, and they want to explain things during that breach. And then you have the guy that did 2 tours of duty in Iraq. And that's the person that does well in the cyber range. That's the person, when the phone rings, leans forward. That's the person that says, I'll do that interview on camera. Fascinating to see the leadership that you need on a team to get through a breach scenario. My third force multiplier is open collaboration. The title of this presentation is Our Biggest Bet Yet. This is our biggest bet yet. You know, in cybersecurity, we don't have a World Health Organization where if there's a disease in one place, we share the results, publish journals, and make sure we're all working together to eradicate that disease. We have a lot of very good efforts in this area, but a couple years ago, we decided to, in addition to the many consortia that we also are members of, to just be open and see what happens. And that led us to taking terabytes of threat intelligence that we've been gathering over the last several decades and make that available to all of our partners and customers. See what happens. On the morning of NotPetya, 80,000 people logged in and started collaborating on this exchange for free, sharing what they knew about the different indicators of compromise. So it's different than a threat sharing alliance. We talked about that 3 or 4 years ago. This is just, let's open it up and see if people can leverage this data and augment it with their ideas. Being at a 100-year-old company, sometimes we have assets that we don't even realize. Turns out that IBM owned the domain name, or the domain number 9.9.9.9, 4 nines. Well, PCH, Packet Clearinghouse, was looking for a way of making web surfing safer. We decided, because of some DNS research that we've been doing, to donate both the research and the 4 nines to PCH. PCH now has a clean DNS service that doesn't do anything else with the data except for help to find malicious sites and allow people to use that DNS service to have a cleaner, safer surfing experience. Millions of people are using this, and we just launched that about 3 months ago. And then finally, we opened up our entire system to allow partners and customers to develop apps on our system. We have to get better at allowing innovation. And that resulted in over 100,000 apps that have been downloaded. All of these apps are free. So again, what if we open up our system and allow people to build on top of it? What will happen? With our threat data available, 100,000 apps downloaded, 50 different vendors. You see some of the logos here building different apps. And these are exciting. We've had a wonderful partnership with Carbon Black. They were one of the first to embrace this, building a really nice app that's adding customer value to our mutual customers. Cisco, what we do a lot of partnering with over the last year, been a very good cooperation, building a FireAmp app that just got released a few months ago. And then we're working with some of the cloud providers, AWS, Azure, IBM Cloud, to build an app that takes all of the cloud threat intel and bring it into one pane of glass for an omni-cloud threat intel experience for customers. So open collaboration really helps to change how we think about sharing, which we as vendors, if we're honest, haven't done enough of in the past. I believe that these force multipliers can make a massive difference to all of us. In the spirit of now matters, these are available now. Augmented intelligence can make the 3,000, 4,000 people in this room do the work of thousands of more folks, and we need that help. Security orchestration gives you the technology to respond fast and encourages you to practice it so that when the shit hits the fan, you're ready. And then finally, I think with open collaboration, we go beyond the alliances to just making information available and seeing what happens for the better good of security. I hope you guys had a wonderful RSA. I enjoyed it this year. There was a new sense of optimism in the air. I believe if we leverage these force multipliers, that sense of optimism will be justified. And as per the video in the beginning, we truly will have fewer headlines when we meet next year. Thank you very much.